Very
Thank you.
good. Thank you very much.
Thanks, guys.
With that, we're going to move to Bruce Schneier. He's a fellow in Harvard Kennedy School of Government. He's an internationally renowned security technologist. If you haven't read his books, then you didn't read the Bible of cryptography, etc. And he's really been in this industry for many years and seen a lot of the progress. So he could surely share some of the macro elements with us. Thank you. Come on, Bruce.
I think that's her way of saying that I'm old. I want to talk also more about the Internet of Things, but I really see it as something that's going to change our industry. Because the Internet of Things is the Internet of the physical world. We're creating an Internet that affects the world in a direct and physical manner, both the sensors that collect data about us and our environment and the actuators that do things. And this is coming at all levels. I mean, no longer do we have a refrigerator. We have a computer that keeps things cold, or a microwave oven is a computer that keeps things hot. And this is a computer that makes phone calls. And we learned that an airplane is, several thousand computer network that flies. And this happens at all aspects of our life. And what this means for us is that Internet security becomes everything security. So everything we know about how the Internet works, how security works, starts affecting everything everywhere. With a really important difference that the threats are greater. The thing about cyber-physical systems is they have real-world consequences. There's a difference between a spreadsheet and a heart monitor or an automobile. And this difference is going to affect us greatly. Normally we think of security in the CIA triad: confidentiality, integrity, availability. Most of the time we deal with confidentiality, right? Data. How do we protect our data? How do we keep it from the wrong hands? How do we make sure it's safe? When you start dealing with the Internet of the physical world, the integrity and availability threats become much greater. I mean, sure, I don't want someone to eavesdrop on the conversations in my car, but I really don't want them to change the database of where the roads are. If you think about the WannaCry attack, that was an attack against availability. The data was locked up. The DynaTAC of last year was an attack against availability. Right? Websites were taken down. And when you think about the threats we're facing, that's where they are. Attacks against elections, attacks against integrity. Is someone manipulating the data? And these things are going to become true and very real and very physical. There's a world of difference between, your spreadsheet crashes and you lose your data, and your car crashes and you lose your life. It might be the same CPU, the same operating system, the same software, the same vulnerability, yet widely different consequences. And to me, this means that government will get involved. Because when people start dying, governments get involved. And I think there are 5 lessons from the world of IT security that I think we need to promulgate to the world everywhere. I want to quickly go through them. The first, most software is poorly written and insecure. I mean, we know this. Software tends to be lousy because we don't want to pay for quality software. Right? The joke of good, fast, cheap, pick any two, that's largely true, and in software, we have picked fast and cheap over quality. Now, poor software is full of bugs. Some bugs are security vulnerabilities. So poor software is vulnerable software, simply because the market doesn't want to pay for better software. Second truism is the extensibility of computerized systems means they can be used against us in ways conventional systems can't. And this is important. The functionality of a computerized device cannot be constrained. So, this is a bottle of water. No matter how hard I try, I cannot make this do anything other than be a bottle of water, because that's all it is. This is a phone. It can do whatever I want it to do. because it's actually a computer. A month ago, I saw a news report that someone took an internet thermostat and made it play the computer game Doom. Right? You laugh, but you're not surprised because it's a computer. This can't play Doom, ever. And that's different. That means a couple of things. Right? This is really hard to secure because it's continuously evolving. Right? Every month it's got a new app. It's doing something different. There are new updates. It's a different animal. And some of the upgrades on these devices are done by other people without my knowledge. I mean, effectively, malware is just a software upgrade, just one I didn't consent to that does things against my interest. Right? And this is going to become the world of everything. Right? This is going to be my refrigerator, my car. A third truism, that the complexity of these systems result in new insecurities. Right? Complexity is the worst enemy of security for a whole lot of reasons, but the natural complexity of computer systems makes them much harder to secure, gives them a larger attack surface, makes them more vulnerable. Right? This is why attack is easier than defense. This is why testing is hard. I mean, a lot of things fall from complexity. And this also leads to a different truism, that there are new vulnerabilities in the interconnections of things. We're seeing when you have complex systems, when you compose them, you can get new vulnerabilities. You can take two systems that are secure, put them together, you get insecurities. You have insecurity in this system, cascade insecurity in that system, affecting something else. I mean, that's the DynaTAC. Right? Vulnerabilities in internet routers and internet recorders and DVRs and webcams were used to commit DDoS attacks against a name server, which dropped a bunch of websites. Right? There was a cascade of vulnerabilities that led to a catastrophic result. Last truism is that computers are vulnerable in a different sort of way. Because of software, because of the natural empowerment of software, vulnerabilities look different. Attacks can scale to a degree that isn't possible otherwise. Previous speaker talked about a bank robbery of stealing $1 from 20 million different accounts. Right? That's a scale attack that computers can do that a burglar can't. Or the notion of class breaks. Right? Automobile manufacturers know how cars fail. Cars have parts have mean time between failures, you calculate them, you do the math, you know how often a car will fail. Add computers and they fail differently. Right? All the cars work perfectly till one day when none of them do. Right? That's the notion of a class break. That you could wake up one morning and every instance of Windows 7 is vulnerable, or every instance of this iPhone is vulnerable. And this is why we have patching mechanisms that are different than automobiles do, because the threats are different. And this becomes even more critical as systems become more critical. I'm also not concerned about the average attacker in the same way. I live in Minneapolis, I have a home there, there are burglars there. There's kind of a bell curve of burglar quality, I'm making this up, right? And I'm concerned about the average burglar in Minneapolis. If there's a really great burglar here in Tel Aviv, I don't care. He's not going to get an airplane. He's not going to fly to my house. He's not going to break in. That the internet doesn't work that way. I'm concerned about the most skilled attacker. Right? The hacker who wrote the Dyn botnet released the code into the wild. There are like 3 or 4 new variants a day. The first one has skill, and the rest use software. Now, these are all differences that we know are moving in the Internet of Things, are moving into the real world. And, we've largely been okay with leaving computer security to the market because it didn't matter that much. Right? It's worked more or less okay. Lots of problems, lots of externalities, lots of interdependencies, but we've muddled along because the effects weren't that great. That's what's changing. And the economics of the IoT are different in some really important respects. So our computers and our phones, right, these things are secure as they are for a couple of really important reasons. The first is that there are teams of engineers at Apple and Microsoft and Google who are designing them correctly, or as correctly as they can, the first time. And those same teams of engineers are on call when there is a vulnerability to rapidly write and disseminate a security patch. That's what we are used to. That's how these things are secured. And that doesn't work for low-cost embedded systems like DVRs and home routers. They're built on a much lower profit margin. They're often built offshore by third parties, and they just don't have security teams associated with those devices. And a lot of the devices vulnerable to the DynaTAC, there's nobody around to write the patch. Even worse, a lot of the devices have no way to be patched. I mean, right now, if you want to patch your DVR, the way you do it is you throw it away and buy a new one. And that's just not going to work. Where we also get our security from the fact that these devices churn. You replace your phone every 2 to 3 years, your computer every 3 to 4 years. And the Internet of Things doesn't work that way. If you imagine someone writing software for an automobile today, it's going to be in a car in 2020, driven for what, 10 years, and then put on a boat, sent down to Nairobi, where it's going to be bought and driven another 20 years. We actually, as an industry, don't know how to maintain 35-year-old software. We don't know. We can't do that. You pull a 35-year-old computer off a shelf and plug it in, you're not going to be able to upgrade it. Right? It's orphaned. It's gone. And that's the way the IoT works. I mean, my DVR is going to last 5 to 10 years. My refrigerator is going to last 25 years. I bought an internet thermostat about 2 years ago. I expect to replace that never. So we have some real interesting market failures. Right? Neither the buyer nor the seller care here. Both want cheap devices that work. There's not a lot of market demand for security, and a lot of it is an externality. So my prediction is, as the internet gets more visceral, gets more deadly, gets more critical, that we are going to see government involvement at the level that we now see for things like aircraft avionics, or healthcare, or food safety. Because when things start killing people, governments get involved. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And now the questioner comes back. It always gets interesting now.
So can the private sector do something about it? I mean,
the private sector can do a lot of things about it. The question is, can they do it without help from the government? I mean, the innovation comes from the private sector in things like automobile safety and product safety and financial instrument safety. But it's governments that require a level of safety or security that industry has to meet. So the market failure is not in the technology, but in getting it broadly adopted. And I think once you have government incentives to adopt technologies, then the market figures out what to do. So I'm very pro-regulation because I think it will spur innovation and not harm innovation.
Very good. Thank you very much. Thank you, Bruce.